So, so there's two kinds of businesses here that are completely different, actually. There are two ways you can build a business, and everybody up until now today, and from Zuck onward, has been talking about the get big fast business, and Stack Exchange is indeed a get big fast business. It's growing. StackExchange.com domain is growing. Wow, that's not going to work anymore, is it? The StackExchange.com domain is now growing at 350% year over year, which is, I don't know, not the fastest thing in the world, but it's pretty friggin' steady, as you saw from that chart. So that's how we. Sure. Thanks, Jessica. I wrote a blog post on Joel Software a long time ago, like in the early 2000s, when I didn't have anything else to do because the economy was collapsing, and it was called Strategy Letter 1 because I was very self-important and pompous then, unlike today, of course. Thank you. And I was writing about how there's two kinds of companies. There's get big fast companies like Amazon, and then there's organic growth companies. And I had just read the story of Ben & Jerry's, so they were an example of an ice cream company. And I kind of compared and contrasted these two different ways of growing a company. And what's interesting, of course, is that Stack Exchange and Fog Creek have kind of exactly the same characteristics. Stack Exchange is a get big fast company, and Fog Creek Software is an organic growth company. So first of all, how do you decide which kind of company you should be? It's not like you get to choose. Like, how many of you want to get big fast? Raise your hand, right? Okay. You have to look at the actual market that you're in. And there's two kinds of markets. A get big fast business is when you're in there there is some kind of a land grab. There is an attempt to capture uncaptured territory before anybody else does the same thing. Okay, so Uber is in that category. Amazon was certainly in that category. Ben & Jerry's was not, because Ben & Jerry's was just ice cream. You can't capture the entire ice cream market. There already is an ice cream market, right? This is like you're trying to new technology is trying to land grab virgin territory. In an organic growth business, you already have 1 million competitors, and all you're doing is trying to claw them away one at a time, patiently, from your competitors. The reason you try to get big fast and you go for the land grab is because there are network effects. So you all know what network effects are? The idea of network effects is the more users you have, the more valuable your network is. And so a network of, let's say if Facebook had 10,000 users, that's not very valuable. And in fact, it would be extremely difficult. Facebook was a classic land grab because nobody's going to be on there if they can't communicate with their friends. That's the same reason I can't get anybody to use Kik, because there's nobody else on there. I mean, there's like 10 million people on there, but it doesn't really help. That's not enough. I need 1 billion. And so a network effect says basically the value is increasing as you get more and more people on there, because the value is a function of n squared, right? You're all computer scientists. The other thing about get big fast is that network effect creates lock-in. Right? Nobody's going to leave Facebook for something that's 20% better or 50% better or even 100% better because their grandma is still looking for the pictures of the puppy. And she likes the pictures of the puppy that you upload. And if you stop putting them on Facebook, she's going to call you. Doesn't matter if the other thing is like more technologically innovative and cool. Now, in an organic growth company, you don't have these things. And so you don't really care about that. You don't need to go for a land grab. And a land grab won't help you because you're not grabbing virgin territory. So that's what get big fast means. You need to be really big in order to create real value. And with organic growth, you're in there for the long haul. It took us 10 years to build FogBugs into a respectable business. And the reason is that there are 1 million bug trackers out there. And so with organic growth business, unless you have infinite money because you were born rich or something, you need to break even right away. You need to find a way to break even right away. And we did that by consulting, by essentially, sort of pouring ourselves out for a couple of months to raise a little bit of cash. And you want to start getting money from clients on day one, and you want to start kind of obsessing about, I need to make this business survive so I can be there to slowly pry away customers, one dead customer at a time from my... and one thing about an organic growth business is you don't go in here unless you have a product that's valuable even with one customer. So the ideal business is something where the first person that downloads it and starts using it is already getting value out of this thing. You run your business completely differently. So when you're trying to get big fast, if you have a problem that can be solved with money, money is cheap, which I know sounds weird, but in this environment, if you have a successful get big fast business, it's very easy to raise money. There's lots of capitalists that are looking for places to put their money. And so you use that money to try to solve problems, even if it's a very expensive way of solving them. But in an organic growth company, you're trying to survive. You're just trying to stay around for as long as you possibly can. So you try to be frugal and cheap about everything that you do. Similarly, when you're trying to get big fast, you put up little signs all over the office that say "Move fast and break stuff." And the idea is to make lots of mistakes, and it doesn't matter. You got to be moving fast. You can't be scared in any way. You just got to be running down the hill. With an organic growth business, those mistakes can kill you, and when they kill you, you don't have any way to come back. The thing that scared us at Fog Creek all the time is that if we ran out of money in the bank, we would have to close. We did not have a source of $1 million to stick into the business to survive one more month. So you're much more careful in an organic growth business because you have to be, because this is your only business. And that means that the get big fast business, you have a tiny, teeny, weeny, it's very, very, very small chance of it becoming a $10 billion business. And I just made up the number 10 billion, but, really, really big business. And if you consider that, of all the Y Combinator, let's say you all apply to Y Combinator and you all get in. I'm sure that's not in the cards. Two of you, actually, of all the people in this room that apply to Y Combinator, and the 60, 70, 80, I don't know how many get in, maybe 2 or 3 of them have a chance of being a $10 billion business. And that's being really, really optimistic. It's actually less than that. So your chances of making a $10 billion business this way by starting out and trying to get big fast are vanishingly small, I'm afraid. And some people like those odds, so good for them. Some people, incidentally, all the people that make $10 billion couldn't care less. They're doing it because they're scratching an itch. They're trying to solve some problem that they have, and they're monomaniacally focused on that. It's never because they want to make $10 million. Now, with an organic growth company, though, if you're just reasonably smart and you pay attention and you never make a terrible mistake, then you're going to make a nice $10 million business. And the number means $10 million means $10 million in revenue a year. And at some point, that's just going to be $1 million to operate it, $9 million that can go in your pocket if you own it. And you have a really good chance of being able to build that in 5 to 10 years in an organic growth business. It's just not that hard. There's a lot of businesses like that. When I used to write a column for Inc. magazine, and I always wanted to write something about VCs, and my editor always said, no entrepreneur takes money from VCs. It's such a narrow world of people that get investments from VCs. It's such a tiny sliver of entrepreneurship that if we write about that in our pages of our magazine, we get hate mail because nobody cares. It doesn't apply to their business. There's millions of businesses out there that are making somebody around $1 million. So again, those are the two models. Are you bootstrapping? Or are you taking VC? And again, there are millions of organic growth companies, and there are a very, very small number of get big fast companies. I wrote a few hundred, but that's like the entire universe of companies in the world. There's like one every decade or so from Silicon Valley. And not being able to decide is what's really going to kill you. So let me see if I can sort of finish a little bit of the story about Fog Creek and Stack Exchange. With Stack Exchange, again, we decided that it was a land grab type of business. And we spent a few years working on it, just everybody working from home and being frugal and all that kind of stuff, just to see where we could get. Now, one thing I don't know if anybody mentioned here, but if you are actually trying to raise money, you're always delaying as much as possible the actual raising of money, because as your company becomes more and more valuable over time, let's say your company now is worth $1 million, but next year it's going to be worth $10 million. If you sell shares, you're actually going to have to sell fewer shares to get the same amount of cash into your bank account. So at any given time, you always want to be raising the minimum amount of money you need to barely survive, as a general rule. And if you can delay the raising of money the very, very first time, then your life is much better, because you have to dilute less when you want to raise money. And it's easier to raise money when you have a nice story about how successful you've been on your own. So Stack Exchange was sort of technically bootstrapped for 2 years. It was called Stack Overflow then. And there were only 3 people working on it full-time, and an awful lot of people from our community volunteering and helping out. But it was really 3 full-timers that were working mostly without pay from home. We built the servers, Jeff Atwood built the servers himself with his hands. And he optimized them to make them really, really fast. He put in a lot of RAM, and he got really good SSD drives and all that kind of stuff. We used a compiled language, which is unheard of, which actually allowed us to run this gigantic site on a very small number of web servers. It was remarkably small. I mean, for the longest time, we had like 3 boxes on the rack. And now we don't, but I think we could probably fit on one rack for Stack Exchange right now, which is a top 100 website in terms of traffic. So there, we were sort of we worked on trying to save money on the servers. We were reasonably frugal. People were working from home. There was no office. But we realized after a couple of years that this was a get big fast business, and I'll tell you why. If it's not obvious, with a question and answer website, there are very strong network effects. You go to the site where you're most likely to get an answer, and we dominate for programmers and pretty much anything related to programmers, including system administrators and SQL administrators and SQL query writers and all those things that are close to programmers. We dominate in math. We have 2 math sites, the research and the non-research. And we have about 90 categories where we don't quite dominate in most of them, meaning somewhere else there's another website out there that's a better place to get answers to your questions about whatever it may be. So a good example of that is Apple. We have apple.stackexchange.com. It's a pretty good site. I would guesstimate that it has maybe 20% of the market for questions and answers about Apple products. It's a much better site, but there is more traffic on Apple's own site and on other forums about Apple. So that's the land grab that we're trying to get, because none of those other sites yet have the magical upvote, downvote badges, karma, reputation, all the comments, all the nice stuff that Stack Exchange has that makes it work as a Q&A platform. And it's not like people can't figure this out, and there's not a single person that builds a Q&A site anymore that doesn't have an upvote and a downvote button. That's not so hard to figure out. So that's the land grab, is we need to take all the traffic away. We know we can take traffic away from an old, boring forum, because those suck, and it's a terrible place to get your questions answered. And what we have is 10 times better than that, and we can displace those. But if somebody else builds a Stack Exchange kind of work-alike with upvotes and downvotes in some category, let's say physical anthropology, that we don't have a site in, then they're going to take that market and they're going to have the network effects. So this is obviously a land grab, and we needed to move as fast as absolutely possible to capture as much as possible of this territory before it got divided up by other people. And that's why we raised money. But this time when we were raising money, it was like falling off a log. It was the easiest thing in the world. I only talked to VCs that I actually wanted to invest in the company. I didn't go knocking on every single door. I spent exactly 2 weeks on the fundraising, and then it was done. I mean, that's all it took. And I was able to raise from my number one choice of VC, which was Union Square Ventures. Like I say, it took about 2 weeks to put together the deal, and it was very, very easy. And that was because of 10 years of work building Fog Creek and getting a reputation, and 2 years of work building Stack Exchange and getting all that momentum. So anything you can do to bootstrap, anything you can do to defer the moment where you need to go raise some money from somebody so that you're in a better position is going to make it so much easier to raise money under far better terms. That's really, really worth doing. The other part of that story actually is I have 4 minutes left. Okay. The other part of that story is another product that Fog Creek started doing. Now, I had to move over to Stack Exchange. Stack Exchange is now